The White House has still not presented a tax plan to Congress, and the question is, with tax season fast approaching, one of the big issues was tax reform and the like. Kyle Walters is a tax strategist out in the Texas area and joins me now to talk about it on 700 WW. Kyle, I'm sorry you're not Kate Upton, but I'll try.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to follow this.
You can't. You really. What a horrible tease that was going into you. It's like, really, you're going from Kate Upton to an accountant? I don't. No, seriously, this is a big issue. Trump campaigned on it partly, and that is major tax reform. We had this come out that top executives from 16 major companies came out and with the American Made Coalition. It's GE, Pfizer, Dow Chemical. We also had a opposition group coming out too with another 100 CEOs against this, and we're talking about lowering the business tax rate. And I think that's the crux outside of the new tax categories, but lowering the effective business tax rate is one of the central things here with Trump. And now you've analyzed this from all different angles. Tell me, what is the timeline, if at all? Is this going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, we know some sort of tax reform is coming. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but really what we've got is we've got the House, so we've got the GOP that has a plan, and we have Trump that has a plan. So whether or not it's one is going to be taken whole, or we're going to have some version of the two of them spliced together, we don't really know. However, both of those plans do have kind of an across-the-board or almost across-the-board lower tax burden for the average U.S. taxpayer.
Okay, for the average U.S. taxpayer, if this thing gets done, because a lot of people were thinking, optimistically so, that in Donald Trump abolishing the IRS. Now, we have a significant presence here in Cincinnati for the Internal Revenue Service in Covington, or at least we did anyway. Down to, they're talking about downsizing and maybe even eliminating the IRS. Do you actually see this, that any politician, that any president, any party is going to be able to do that?
No, that would be very interesting. I mean, I know that one of the proposals is something to the effect of for taxpayers below a certain income threshold, they're able to just submit a postcard, pay no taxes, and say I win.
Right.
However, that's going to be a small portion of the taxpayer base. Most are still going to have to go through the normal process. Now, if we go from a much higher amount of tax brackets down to, say, 3, that does make people's lives a little simpler. If the IRS going to be abolished, that's probably not going to happen.
I think, too, that, it'd be nice, and I'm not saying anything's possible. I thought Donald Trump wouldn't get elected. He got elected. I was wrong about that. So, you can't say it won't happen. But I think the reason why is it's not one party or one individual. It's the system. And if you eliminate the set-asides, the carve-outs, the exemptions, then don't you eliminate the need for politicians? Isn't their job basically is to fight for their narrow groups in order to get them scraps of that pie?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it when you start looking at different pieces like the interest rate exemption that home buyers get on their home, right? Do they really need that? Maybe not, but who's going to vote to go against it, right? Or what politician is going to support that, right? He may say, well, it may be better for the economy, but I'm going to lose my voter base, therefore I'm sure not going to do it.
Yeah, it's not about whether or not it makes sense, because I think we can all agree that the tax system is way too overcomplicated. It's way too difficult to comply with. It's costly. It's cumbersome. It's contradictory. It's a whole bunch of things. But the reason it won't go away is because we all agree the tax system would be blown. It'd be much easier to go, hey, listen, anything over $30,000 a year you pay tax on, something along those lines, outside the basic necessities, a use tax, a consumption tax. Great. That'd be a lot simpler to play with, but it eliminates these guys that vote on it, and that's the real problem here. It has nothing to do whether or not it makes sense. It has everything to do with protecting their jobs.
Yeah, Scott, it's really tough to argue for a reason behind needing, tens of thousands of pages of tax code. I don't know that anybody's going to be able to come up with a rational argument there on why we need that.
Exactly. President Trump's original tax plan called for, I think, 3 brackets, right? 10, 20, 25%. And now he's kind of adjusted that a little bit, which is more in line with the House GOP. Can you explain who that affects and what actually is going to happen?
Yeah, so for the majority of taxpayers, their taxes will be going down. So you end up having a top tax rate at that 33%. And again, nothing's finalized yet. But 33% is lower than what it would be now. Okay. Some people that may be actually seen taxes go up, so they're getting rid of or proposing to get rid of the head of household status, which means, and certain exemptions. So, for example, if you are a single mom who has 3 kids, you could actually end up seeing a higher tax bill than you had prior, just based on the way it's going to be structured.
Well, that's not good. That's going to get people upset, isn't it?
It sure is. Yeah, I mean, at first glance, you say, "Hey, this is a kind of a sweeping reform, right? It's going to lower everybody's taxes." And the majority of the tax savings is at the very upper tax bracket. Kind of the 1% are going to save a whole lot on their taxes. The rest are going to save some, and then some are not going to save. So there's going to be some happy people. There's going to be some less than happy people. And again, that's all if it even comes to fruition.
Well, that's true, and I think the way I look at it too is certainly we definitely have a divide. There's no questioning the fact that we have the haves and the have-nots in America, the 1%, the other 99. However, I will point out that saving the people at the top 1% is a hell of a lot more money than me at the bottom saving 1%, which is probably the best way to look at it, as opposed to, well, you're getting this huge tax break and I'm just getting a little bit. Well, it's relative to the amount of money you're worth and the amount of money you make. Right.
Yeah, it's all percentage based.
Right. But people don't understand percent. I'm horrible with math, which is why I hire people like you to do my taxes, and at least I understand that very basic principle.
Yeah. Hey, it's that's what the pros are for, I guess.
But the fact of the matter is, it's all politics, and then politics masks, I guess, common sense in a lot of cases as well. Are they ever going to get around to the issue? And I think this is probably more doable, and that is the corporate tax rate, especially the corporate tax rate that drives companies overseas.
Yeah, I think that's something that's going to get pushed through, mainly from the standpoint, the U.S. has a notoriously high tax rate for corporations. Almost, to where you see corporations starting to get creative on not necessarily tax evasion, but let's just call it tax avoidance. Mm-hmm. How do we create a more profitable system for corporations to get them where they need to be, which is back here in the United States?
Yeah, exactly. And how did we get to the point? Give us some historical perspective. I don't know if you know or not. How did we get to the point where it's 35%? Other countries are 10, 13%.
That's a good question. I mean, overall, tax reform doesn't happen that often. So what's coming up is going to be a pretty big deal, right? Tax reform isn't one of those things that happens new with every president. When you talk about what's been going on with our corporate rates, it's not as much our corporate rates, but it's all relative. So if we're 35, but somebody else is 15, and they've lowered theirs, it's not that ours have changed so dramatically as much as others have tried to be competitive and get some of these larger corporations. Because, a couple billion-dollar company in the United States may not be a huge deal, but in certain countries it's a big deal, and they're willing to make some changes in order to be more accommodating. For
is that the thing? If we lower that effective tax rate for corporations, are other countries just going to simply, well, for lack of a better term, drop their pants even more?
Yeah, and we don't know yet, right? That's
Probably.
The thing is, hopefully it's not a race to the bottom. That's not an ideal position to be in.
But it kind of sounds that way, and the other one is, I guess, maybe race to the top, too, with if we're proposing a 20% exit tax, 20% import tax on goods from, let's say, Mexico, for example, well, they're going to slap taxes on us, too. And is that offset going to be a greater cost than it was if we just left it the way it is?
Yeah, so we've got two things going on right now. And one is the border adjustment tax. So that's what Ryan and the GOP are talking about. Then there's this tariff that we're talking about, and those really have completely different impacts on the economy and on pricing. Those get a lot of times put together, but they're actually two different proposals. Now, we don't know which one's going to be pushed through, but the border adjustment is a bit different than the border tariff. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what the politicians can agree on there.
Yeah, if they can agree at all on anything. How much do you think the needle changes here in the next 4 years? How much does it move?
As far as tax rates?
Yeah, as far as tax rates, or just tax reform in general.
Well, I think the fact that we've got a president and then we've got a GOP that agrees on one thing, and that's that taxes need to go down. Mm-hmm. So I think that bodes well for some sort of reform. I think it's going to mean lower taxes. In what format, we don't know, but we do. But nobody's proposing any sort of increase across the board. So that's the good news. So when people are talking about doing their tax planning, a lot of it is saying, well, we at least know or can hope, and the odds are that they will be the same or lower for the next foreseeable future until the next stage of reform. We just don't know what that's going to look like as far as in the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, okay. And, again, these things move at glacial speeds as opposed to the ones that were promised on the campaign trail, but there's nothing new.
That's
right. Nothing new there, right?
Yeah, you got a lot of posturing from people wanting to make a name for themselves or stand up for something or, whatever, which typically just means are doing out of principle rather than trying to get stuff done. So hopefully we can get them to get it done mode and push some of those savings down to the taxpayer.
All right, very good. Thanks again for the time. I appreciate it. Kyle Walters out in Texas. Thanks again.
All right, have a great one.
All right, there
Bye-bye.
you go.